Good morning, good afternoon. How we doing today, everybody? Well, I hope. Uh, it's been it's an exciting few days already, isn't it? How you doing, everyone? How you doing? How you doing? Good night, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Hello, hello. It's Osimhen in 40 minutes. We got a lot to talk about. We have a lot to talk about today, don't we? We have a lot to talk about. I got to sift through it, make sure we cover everything, but certainly we have an enormous amount to discuss. We really do. Yeah, crazy news last couple of days, right? We're getting practically everything coming out about all of this. And there's amazing stuff. I don't know about that on June 1st necessarily from a financial perspective. But I don't know. It kind of depends when these deals are effective and how the money all works. I'm not totally positive how that works. I guess it doesn't particularly matter. If we make deals on June 1, I guess the amortization, since it's daily, it's technically getting stretched into the next year regardless, but it doesn't particularly matter. We'll talk about all of it. What do I want to talk about today? I want to talk about, obviously, that we're getting 2 attackers coming in. I want to talk about, obviously, Cunha and that whole situation. I want to talk about Amorim's views and all of that as well. And I want to talk about Osimhen still as a subject of discussion, because it still should, for now, remain as a subject of discussion. Did you know we were in talks to sign Cunha in 2000? Yes, we were interested in Cunha in 2022. But we've got to talk about Osimhen as well. Obviously, there's some links today. It's never really went away from entirely, but obviously it's a very conditional thing, the whole Osimhen situation. So look, let's get into it. First and foremost, Osimhen Hope. Yes, MPB. I am not letting go of Osimhen Hope only because he's really highly rated by some people, and there has been contact, and so when that has occurred, then you can't let it go. At this point, obviously there was Mast Antuono who came up as well, but I'm not so sure about that one right today. But let's see. I don't know about that 40 million thing. We'll get to that. Don't worry. I know there's a whole lot to do today, a whole lot to discuss. So the first thing was talking about was Ruben Amorim. Now, if you're here, did you watch the video I put out this morning? Did you watch the video I put out this morning about United and the progress and Ruben Amorim and all of that? Did you watch it? I'm going to pull that up in just a second here. But let me know if you watched that, because it's obviously very part and parcel to the whole discussion here. When you look at kind of everything that's happened, this is where it really breaks down, I would say. Let me look at all of this. Oops. Here. If you missed it, this is the part that is the most concerning when you look at everything. And this is why a few weeks ago we started talking about how United are going to go for 2 forwards this summer. Because the assessment essentially made by Ruben Amorim and Wilcox and everybody involved here was United aren't actually nearly as bad as it looks, but they do have the worst goal scoring unit in the Premier League when you look at the numbers. Stuart gifted 10 memberships to the channel. Thank you so much, my friend. I see some people getting that I recognize getting that one. I really, really appreciate that so much. Yeah, it means so much, that we'll have some people who doing that each time you guys are here in the channel. It means a lot. To me, it's awesome. I really, really do appreciate that. But yeah, Talk of the Devil spoke about this too. But essentially, this is the issue, and this was the view of the people within the club, and Ruben Amorim. It's all about the goals. We just can't score goals, and Amorim was talking about this in the press conference. Yeah, second worst, Alex. Correct. Yes, second worst. But it's not about. That's the funny thing, Mark. It's not about the defenders. It's not about the defenders, because when what really stands out is when you look at this bottom line, the rest of the team has scored 27 goals. The rest of the squad has scored 27 goals. So somehow we are finding a way for the rest of the team to get goals. The rest of the team to do things. I mean, look, you could take the last 3 weeks and you could probably add 10 goals to it if you watch those games. How many goals should we have scored? How many of that is Bruno? A fair, I mean, what has he got? 8 or 10 goals or something like that? A fair chunk, but it's not like there aren't other clubs that have number 10s who score goals. Chelsea do. There's a lot. We have the second worst output, but only 4 clubs have scored more goals via the rest. I believe it was Chelsea. Obviously, that kind of makes sense because Cole Palmer has 14 goals for Chelsea. So Chelsea are one of the clubs that have other players scoring goals in addition to the front three. But their front three still has so many. But you look at a team like Brentford, 41 goals. You know what I mean? 41 goals from their front three, and they're in it's unbelievable. I think it was Chelsea, City, and I want to say Liverpool, maybe also Aston Villa, as well. Now, is that to say that means it's all good? We create enough chances, things like that? No. However, we do need to score more goals, because what you cannot tell me is that Leicester have a better chance creation than us. Ipswich have better chance creation than us. West Ham have better chance creation than us. Wolves have better. They don't. Their chances are being created by the front three. It's not like the rest of the team, has nothing to do with it. The front three make their own chances. You can't write that part of it off. You don't say you don't take the front three out of the equation for chance creation. Your front three are the guys responsible for making most of the chances in a team and scoring them, correct? If you look at most clubs, I would gather that the biggest chance creation comes from players in the front three. So, that is a major issue. And I think if you look at that in general, then it would make, a big difference as well. Like if you look at, yeah, correct, DB. The thing is, though, if you look at it right, like I bet you go look at any of these big clubs where their front three are scoring, and then figure, do they have some like crazy chance creation? I'd actually be quite curious to look at that. Give me a second. I want to actually look at that because you bring up an interesting point that I want to see. Let's go look at Leicester. Being closer to goal usually helps with scoring. Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, like, not creating chances is certainly not separate from the forwards. They're the guys most responsible for creating chances. Yeah, let's check. Like, let me give you an example here, okay? Here is Leicester, who have more goals from their front three than us. Look at their top 3 in terms of expected assists. Oops, I clicked the wrong thing. It's El Canus, a forward, Jamie Vardy, a forward, and Buonanotte, who is also, if I'm not mistaken, a forward, right? So their forwards not only are scoring the goals, but they're also creating the most chances. Correct? So saying we don't make enough chances because of the defenders is inaccurate. Our forwards don't make chances and they don't score chances. Most teams, that is real interesting on Osimhen. We'll get back to that. Most teams, I would imagine, are like this. Let's go look at I want to go look at Brentford, and I'm curious about Brentford. Okay. Look at the expected assists. Look, Mbeumo scores the most goals and creates the most chances. Now, this is because I have Leicester also selected. Oops. Unselect Leicester. I was like, why is El Canus showing in here also? So their biggest chance creator is also their forward. Then there's Damsgaard, who's not, right? Now, then Kevin Shade is a forward, correct? So their third highest chance creator is also a forward. And then, it gets spread out a bit, and then there's Wissa. Yeah, Damsgaard is doing an amazing job, by the way. I mean, 9 assists. That's pretty impressive. Regardless of that, right? So you have their forwards are mostly their chance creators, followed by maybe like one other player. If we look at United here, our biggest chance creators are Bruno, still Marcus Rashford, who's not even here, which should tell you something, by the way. Ahmad, who was mostly playing at wing back during that period, and then it goes all the way down to Garnacho. And where's Rasmus Højlund? All the way down here. So our forwards aren't creating chances and they're not scoring chances. They're not creating chances and they're not scoring chances. It is a big, big issue. And it is the number one problem with the club today. It's like, sure, we can take it off and say, look, they're young, they're not expected to be that good, yada yada. But that doesn't mean they're good. Those are reasons they're not good, and that's okay. But doesn't change the fact that they're not good and that we need more. The ball needs to be getting the forwards in the dangerous positions. I promise you, if you check our possession, if you check our here, I could give you an example of this, okay? Here. I'll give you an example. If you check our stats, I would almost guarantee we are not worse than these bottom clubs at getting the ball to the front line. Example, let's take this, for example. Rasmus Højlund, he gets on average 3.72 touches in the attacking penalty area, which is more than Liam Delap, okay? It has nothing to do with getting the ball there. Højlund gets the ball more than Liam Delap does, but Delap scores more goals, right? Switch back over so I can show you something here. Let's compare two more players here. Two more very relevant players, given our top targets here, right? Let's look at Cunha and Garnacho. Cunha touches the ball 4.32 times per game in the attacking pen. Garnacho touches it 7.87 times in the attacking penalty area. Almost double. And look at progressive passes received, 12. So he receives the ball double that Cunha does in attacking positions. So these numbers show you here. What this shows you is here's a player who doesn't get the ball much and does a lot with it. And here's a player who gets the ball a ton and does nothing with it. There are numbers to show this. Our players are getting the ball. Look at Garnacho's in the 95th percentile for touches in the attacking area. The 92nd percentile in all of Europe for progressive passes received. We're getting the ball to the attack. It's dying when it reaches the attack. It's dying at that point in time, okay? That is the reality, and we have to accept that. That is the truth. I wish it wasn't. I wish it was that much of a structural problem, but what this tells you when your forwards are getting the ball this much is they're wasting it. they are wasting the ball. There's Rasmus Højlund doesn't touch the ball very much, and part of that certainly has to do with Garnacho as well, unfortunately. But yeah, this is a very apparent issue when you look at how little guys like Delap and Cunha touch the ball and how much they do with it. Okay, that is essentially the problem at the end of the day. So there's really no way to cut it. It is our forwards is 90% of the issue, but that's also Amorim's view. I can tell you that for an absolute certainty, that the view of Amorim and the view of those involved is that our attack is absolutely second rate and has to be fixed. That is the reality at it. We're the second worst team at losing the ball on our own third. Yeah, the first phase of build-up still needs improvement, no doubt about that. I don't disagree with you there, but we do get the ball up to our forwards enough. What's your theory on why the progress of Garnacho and Højlund has gone backwards? It's because I think to a large part, I explained as well in that video, Ten Hag's priority for the last season and the start of this one was chaos. Play on the run, play on the break. So, there's not a lot of work that's been put into it, into, training to be players who receive it in attacking positions, who interplay. I mean, I'll take you the example of Alejandro Garnacho. Against Wolves in the second half, he did exactly what he needs to do, right? In the second half, he did exactly what he needs to do, correct? I think I'm very critical of Garnacho. His second half was perfect for me. He inverted, played as a narrow winger, 1-2s in the box, and crosses into the attackers instead of dribble in and shoot, instead of run on the break and lose it, instead of constantly trying to dribble his man, which he's not very good at. He did exactly what he should do, and we should have scored goals on that. The problem is we see that once every 10 games from Garnacho, and then it goes back to dribble, dribble, shoot, dribble, dribble, shoot, dribble, dribble, shoot, play on the break. And sometimes it feels like the brains are just cooked on that respect. It's frustrating. I wish it wasn't the case, but Højlund's movement there's no box presence. Garnacho coming off the bench is still a good option to have. I would agree with that. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, exactly. The cutbacks were there, the underlap, the overlap. It happens so rarely. We see one game that it happens and then it just doesn't. The other problem with it is he's still not a goal scorer. We need goal scorers. We need our forwards finishing chances in this system as narrow players. Francisco Morai gifting 5 memberships to the community. Thank you so much, my friend. I really appreciate that. I see some people who are here a lot that are getting that as well. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Thank you. But yeah, look, the assessment from Amorim, the assessment from the club is we need forwards. And we were just talking about this, so let's shift to the budget aspect of this, which is that if you remember last week, I was saying that we were prepared to spend 80 to 100 million for 2 players up front. And they'd rather spend all their budget there than do anything else. We'd rather spend all our budget on those 2 forwards than anything else, if that's what we have to do. Right. That was the goal. That was the setup. That was the direction. That's where we were going. And then look at what's coming out today. Let me pull some of these things up so that I read them, because I know another article came out that was just coming now. There's a lot in this, actually. It's a good one. But the other factor that is really, really big here is that a few weeks ago, when we missed out on Quenda, right? When we missed out on Quenda, I mentioned that what I was told at that time is the budget has shifted to a forward. That instead of going for that right wing back and a striker, we said, fuck it. We don't want to go spend more money on a right wing back. we're going to buy 2 forwards. We're going to shift the money to the attack. That's what we're going to go for. And truthfully, I think it's a blessing in disguise, because between Ahmad and Mantato, I think we will have good enough options at wingback. Even though I really rate Giovanni Quenda, and instead it means we're going to get what we need up front. The other thing that has really helped our budget in the view of the club is the coming forward of youth. Like you say there, thank goodness for Fredrickson and Heaven. Fredrickson and Heaven and all of that have made a big difference in the impact of the thinking to say, we probably have center backs we could use. I mean, look at our contingent of young center backs. They're good, man. We've got Yoro, we've got Dilict, we've got Maguire for another season, we've got Mazraoui. Now we're going to have Heaven, and Fredrickson is showing he can play in the Premier League. Additionally, there is another factor. Which is Harry Amas. Harry Amas has shown as well he is a competent left wing back who can make it in the Premier League. Now, is it an every game thing? We'll see. Is he a young player? We'll see where he gets to. That's okay. But what that also means is Patrick Dorgu, as a left-footed player, can play on the right. And we have Diego Leon coming this summer. So we have a really interesting thing, if you notice, where we're starting to stockpile young talents in the back line. Because now we could put Amos on the left and Dorgu on the right to get our left-footed dynamic on the right. And that means Ahmad can play up front, and it gives us more options there. So we're getting more and more and more by way of options and flexibility in how we want to, pick up and run the back. And that is allowing us to focus our money up front. Okay? That is allowing us to focus our money up front. No, I haven't talked about Osimhen. It'll be in the striker section. I'll talk about Osimhen. It's allowing us to focus our money up front. And that has been a huge, huge focus in the last couple months, is just to say, that's what we've got to do. Whatever it takes, we need to fix the goals in this team. And I think the data backs that up. And I think the evidence backs that up. And I started looking into it because from whoever I was talking to, I started hearing that was the plan, a few weeks ago, that it was like, we're just going to get forwards. That's the assessment. And so, I think they obviously have come to the same conclusion that the data shows, which is we just can't score goals. And you look at Amorim's comments on Sunday. What does he say? We just can't. How many times has he said recently, we can't score goals? We just have to score the goals. We have to finish the chances. How many times has he said that recently? How many games has it affected, right? Tell me a game recently where our goal scoring has not cost us. Like genuine chances, okay? Because Wolves, we should win if we score goals. Lyon, we should have been up 3-0 easily. Newcastle was shit, but that was in between the Lyon games. Lyon, again, the first leg, we should have scored more goals. Man City, we should have scored more goals. I'm not even saying we beat Lyon, but we should have been well ahead. And I'm not even talking about chance creation. I'm talking about genuine opportunities to score goals when we had them and we blew them. Big, big chances. It's every game. It's every fucking game. And that is the crazy thing. Now, I was looking up something else this morning, which is kind of wild. And I want to check this, see if I have this accurate. Of course, they're what ifs and should have. That's the point. We should have scored those goals. That's exactly right. They are what ifs and should have. I want to show you something, but I need to find it. Hold on. Let me see if I have it right. Because I was noticing this, and then Mr. Noticer, right? And then I was like, holy shit. Check this out. This is insane. This is actually insane. It's one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life, okay? From a stat standpoint. Look at this. If there was ever evidence of this, let me show you something. And look, I understand. Anyway, look. This is Rasmus Højlund's game log. Look at this. Last season in the Premier League. Look at this. It will blow your mind. every single game he scored in, we win or draw. Every single one we scored in, we win or draw in the Premier League last season. Do you see that? Every single one is a win or a draw. 2 draws and no, it's 1 draw. Literally 1 draw. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 wins. Okay? Now, I'll show you the Premier League this season too, to show you the evidence of this. All right? It's actually mind-blowing when you look at it. Now, he had the opposite result in the Champions League where we kept losing every time he would score. But in the league, all right, I'm just going to take ages to load here, so apologies. But when your striker scores, you tend to win. I mean, it's one of those things. You score goals and you get points. But it's him in particular, because when he scores, it tends to be like we have other players scoring goals. He's usually not the only goal, but it's very often a goal that, pushes you over the edge. There's a 4-3 win in there, he has a goal. A 2-1 win, he has a goal. A 2-1 win, he has 2 goals. A 4-2 win, he has a goal. A 3-2 win, he has a goal. So in most of those instances, yes, Jesus, transfer market is absolutely dead. Give me a break here. All right, there we go. In most of those instances, okay, it's still not working. This website is actually cooked. Okay, yeah, all right, fucking hell. Yeah. Anyway, in most of those instances, his goal was the difference between, 3 and 4. Between 3 and 4 points. And we unfortunately, I don't have a lot of evidence of it this year. But if you take a look here as well, it's not as 1-to-1, but obviously it's helped. It's helped in Europa. Win against Brentford, loss against Forest, and a win against Leicester. So we don't have fuck all by way of evidence this year, but it's still 2 wins, 1 loss, which is a hell of a lot better as to a a ratio than our current win rate, even though we just don't have enough evidence to suggest it. But it's actually kind of crazy. Are we no longer considering buying a midfielder? No, we are, but I think it's very much dependent on Eriksen, Casemiro, for what we can do there. But I thought that was actually kind of mind-blowing. It's one of those things that's rather obvious, but it goes to show when your striker is scoring goals, you're winning games. If they're not scoring, you're not winning. And that's it should be clear, but it really just tells you this is of course why your striker is so important. And they do have a huge effect on the team. We can talk about Rashford in a little bit later because there was an interesting article that came out. That's Football for Dummies. I know, and it's it's so obvious, but it's kind of for some reason when we look at this team, why can't we see it? Now I want to show you another example here. Alejandro Garnacho. Look at when he scores. Win, loss. 4 wins and 1 loss when Alejandro Garnacho scores. Same correlation is there, very, very strongly. 4 wins, 1 loss when Garnacho scores. Again, it is obvious, it's stupidly obvious as a statement to make, but the fact of the matter is, we win when our forwards score goals. We win when our forwards score goals, we lose when they don't. We need them to score more goals. And we will win more games. I mean, that's as stupid as it gets. But it is what it is. So anyway, regardless of that, budget has all been shifted to the attack. So now let's talk about the main one that we want to get, which is obviously Cunha. Now, there's been at least a dozen stories about Cunha in the last week, the last few days, I should say, since the since the game. Now, the obvious reason for this is that United have held direct discussions with his representatives at the same time as this game occurring and following up on him as a major target. United have been following him since, I think, a while back, and there was even talk, a little bit of hints. I think we discussed it back then in January about if he leaves, maybe we would look at him, and maybe we could do it, but it tends to be fairly expensive and all of that. At that time, I don't think it was viable for us to do. I don't think it was feasible. But obviously, United have prioritized him as a major target. King Ragnar, Cunha, Delap, Osimhen goalkeeper, center mid, and if we sell Garnacho, then go for more Turkey Master and realistic. Some of that potentially, but I think that's obviously it would depend. Is it Delap or Osimhen in that case? Because, and then is there Champions League and all of that as well? And we've been interested in him since 2022. Yeah, correct. We were, but it's a good thing he went to Wolves, I think, and it's a good thing that he went there and found his place, and really came up as a player. But obviously we've held talks recently. One of the main things that I think is really, really important to note here, and why this one is heating up so much, is because he really would like to join us. And that is essentially the compounding factor in this. He really would like to join us. And the view was that if we were to go for a younger striker like Delap, who's a little less proven, we 100% needed him, needed support. Needed somebody else to reduce some of the burden on the goal scoring. And some of the things that have attracted us to Cunha on that front are, one, his release clause. It makes the deal easy. We think it's a good value. We're very likely to pay around the release clause, but broken down into installments. It's not a problem at all. That's very normal. The clubs are generally not worried about that. Wolves are not being relegated. They don't need this huge cash influx right off the bat. So it really makes no difference most of the time, release clause versus no release clause, but it does set the price. And so United are pretty happy with the fee. They think that 60 million for a proven Premier League goal scorer and attacker is very good. He says it happened with Mount, and it's for the same reason. We held discussions with him in London at the same time as we played them, and so it kind of moved the deal forward. And so we've done the same thing at this time: is have this discussion with Cunha, make those contacts, talk about it. And again, the biggest encouragement is that there's no difference amortization-wise. It's just cash flow, Ali. No difference amortization-wise. Release clause, no release clause, it doesn't matter. Amortization is always evened out regardless of how it's paid. So, anyway, we're very, he wants to join United. He loves it. He's so excited by the prospect of it. And this is why I was saying it reminds me a lot of Bruno Fernandes. Because in a specific way, not because they're the same type of player, but from a mentality standpoint, what I've noted with Cunha, and I've had concerns over, attitude, things like that, understand, from a disciplinary standpoint. But when I've noted in watching him more in recent times and getting like the vibe of it, is that he is a guy who wants to take the responsibility. Someone who will shoulder the burden of the club, essentially, in a similar way that Bruno did when he came in. He's somebody who comes up and says, I will take care of this, and sometimes that could show up the wrong way. I mean, how much Bruno was getting, Bruno's had his own disciplinary issues this year. He's been suspended for as many games as Cunha, right? So, but he sorted it out. And why did that happen is because these are players who care. These are players who want to shoulder the burden, the responsibility of the club, who want to make things happen and get very upset when they're not happening. And you need some of that. Now, obviously, he has to control himself. He has to not get banned and things like that. But, it's a similar mindset that I think matters, and the way that they conduct themselves on the pitch, it shows. Yeah, Bruno got a red card for in the league and in Europa that were not overturned, but yeah, he is somebody who wants to take responsibility. And so, given the fact that the fee is essentially not an issue, and he wants to join, that's what makes it basically a done deal at that point in time. Now, I'm not going to say that it is, because as we've seen before, we don't know what other clubs can do. But the reason that they can say it's very close is this: if you know what the fee is and you're willing to pay it, and the player tells you they want to join and they're good with the salary, it's a done deal. It's close. There's nothing really else to discuss. There's nothing really else to negotiate. You're just waiting for the right time to do it. The only real factor in this is if there's other clubs. But the indication United have received, which makes everybody feel confident, is that he wants to join United. That is essentially what it is, and that's essentially what makes it everybody so confident. And so you've seen a lot of reports coming out, including, Wheeler and those guys already there. That's what they discuss. I'm not saying personal terms are done, but essentially, from as far as I can gather, they are basically where the basics of what a contract would look like, what a fee would look like, what his terms would look like, are all there. There's always more details and specifics that they will sort out, but so be it. Will we do the same things with Dorgu, pay slightly if the lease cost can be broken down? Yes. Yeah. Generally, yes, because there's no reason to spend the kind of cash up front. So that's why there's that much confidence in it. Is it not tapping up to agree personal terms before a fee is agreed? No, technically, you can really do everything via the agents. Now, whether or not Ruben Amorim's little, pat on the backs and private little chats with him on the pitch are tapping up is another story, but everybody does that. So I don't think it particularly matters in that case. But no, you are allowed to talk via, agents at any given time. So we can afford him. Yeah, that's exactly the point. He's given priority to us. He tells us I want to join you. I want to take that responsibility for you. So that's really why everybody is saying he's close, because that's essentially what happened. So it makes a lot of sense. From a perspective of him, what makes me so very interested, sorry, let me pull up the other thing. When I did this tens video a while ago, I broke down this shooting thing. I did this quite a bit ago, and I put all these players on this chart in terms of their shooting efficiency and a few other things. And Cunha was obviously blowing everybody away. This is a chart of how many shots they take per 90 to how many goals per shot. And as you can see, he's a high-volume shooter. Shoots about the same as Garnacho and Semenyo, but finishes 4 times better than them right now. He is far and away the best shooter of all of the players that we've looked at. Mbumo and Cherki are about as efficient, but they get off a lot fewer shots. So Cunha was miles ahead here. So in terms of getting a top scoring 10, he's the best in Europe right now from that perspective. In terms of like what's on the market or what's around, obviously I haven't compared the numbers of everybody else. Chance creation and duel winning, he's right around in the middle. Decent there. Good, decent. He's average. He's not like your super creative player. He's not your insane take-on player, but he's about average. And then the last thing was what I thought was carrying efficiency and progression. For the amount that he's carrying it, the distance that he's making it, he's fairly good there too. So you're talking about players who carry the ball well, bring it up the pitch, average in chance creation, but absolutely unbelievable as a goal scorer. And that is why they want him. And why they prioritized him is, of course, that exact point. It's about the goals. Let me go check these. Make sure I'm not missing anything here. It's all about the goals. at the end of the day. That's what matters to everybody the most. Um, yeah. Um, so Cunha, I'm fairly certain is going to happen. I'm not going to lie at this point in time, because I didn't put Palmer on there, to be clear. The thing with going from Wolves to us is that he already got the 150K bump at Wolves, and a big part of that, I believe, was because of to keep him for another 6 months, and that's kind of his expected wages when he joins the next club. So he's very likely not going to be getting like another huge bump on top of that. It's more likely that he's going to. It's more likely that he's going to be on similar to those wages, but that would be a question that I have. That would be one thing I would like to know is he going to be expecting another huge bump? But based on the first context that they've had, it's not an issue. It's not viewed as an issue, so I expect it'll be okay. It could be 150K with bonuses for CL and things like that. Yeah, for sure. It could be fairly similar, but with more incentives on top of that. So, yeah, just summing it up on the first 3 points, Amorim and all of their evaluations, attack, attack, attack. We want all our money to go into the forwards. We want to spend our full budget pre-extra sales on the forwards. That's what we want to do. That's what we want. That's what we're prioritizing. That's the view of everybody. Once we missed out on Quenda, it all shifted up front and was like, we're just going to spend our money there. Doesn't mean we're not going to spend more. If we get Champions League, if we make other sales, we can do more in the market. But pre-sales and without Champions League, it's mostly those 2 players. That's what we can do. And even affording them is in large part due to those unpopular things that I don't want to bring up again because it's been quiet and we haven't had to debate it for a long time, but they're called budget cuts and sackings, unfortunately. That's why we can do this right now, is because of that. Despite the loss of potential European revenue and all of that, the savings that we've made over the course of the season have essentially freed up the space for spending between 80 to 100 million, regardless of Champions League and regardless of different sales. And then on Cunha, we really like him as a second player to bring the goals to support the strikers. We don't have enough goal scorers. And he wants to join United, and we're not really concerned about the fee, the wages. That's all straight there. So it doesn't seem to be an issue. Do we have the budget straight up to buy on June 1st? Essentially, yes, because we can amortize it. Amortization is not yearly. It's daily, I believe. So if it's 60 million, it's 12 million a year. We're only paying 1 million to get him on June 1st versus July 1st. Does that make sense? That's what it costs us, is 1 million. In amortization, it's costing us 1 million. Yeah, that's why we kind of can. 12 million a year means 1 million a month is what it's costing us amortization wise. So technically we can do it a little bit early. But one of the reasons oftentimes you wait till July 1st though is because if there's other costs, but those could be structured, those could be delayed. Like let's say you got to pay agent fees. Well, a lot of times those are not amortized. You have to pay them up front. Depending on what those fees are, it depends when we do that. But those things can always be adjusted with the agent. You could say, hey, July 1 will pay you the 6 million fee or something like that. You never know. So some of those things usually have to be sorted out on those aspects. But it depends. Sometimes agent fees are taken out of the fee of the selling club. It just depends how everything is structured. You just don't know. It's not always clear what happens. So yeah, I think that Cunha will come in. Now, I don't know why we would do that anyway, by the way. Just I understand the need to want the deal wrapped up. I don't know why we'd execute it early, because he's not going to be anywhere near us until July. We come back for training. We're not in the Club World Cup. There's nothing for us there. in the case of Cunha, we're not going to be on preseason. We're not going to be on tour until July. So I don't know why we would pay extra to get him early, but unless it's just to get it done so it's not a concern. But I'm fairly sure you can always just make it effective July 1st anyway. You could you could agree a deal today, and then execute it on July 1st. It doesn't particularly matter in that respect. I'm pretty sure you can just do effective date July 1st whenever, if you wanted to, and it would still be a signed and sealed contract. So, but who knows? I mean, I'm not worried about it. If it's early, it's early. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I thought we had a postseason tour. We do, right? But when is that? That is, isn't that in May anyway? Yeah, it's in May, where he's not coming to Malaysia. That's 28 May, 30 May, and then it goes to July. He's not. There's no way he's coming to Malaysia. He can't. The window won't even be open by then. So that's not an effect on the matter. Yeah, that doesn't affect anything. So yeah, I don't know why we would do it early, to be quite honest, but that's okay. Yeah, he couldn't anyway, I think, because it has to wait until the next season regardless. So yeah, it doesn't matter. Forget about it. It's non-concerning to us. Now let's talk about then strikers, because essentially one of the things we were looking at here was obviously we're lining up like these different options in multiple positions. I think that the idea here with Cunha is that because he can be a sure thing, it's better just to get it done, right? It's better just to get him in because it's a sure thing. Because he wants to join. You see what I'm saying? So that guarantees us something. If you wait on Cunha for Delap to make his decision, you could miss on both. You know what I mean by that? Or what have you. So it's better, it's like a bird in the hand. It's better to say, okay, Cunha wants us. We're going to wrap that deal up, get it done. Then be flexible on the striker front, because the striker front is much more complicated right now. And if you get Cunha, then you've got a top goal-scoring forward in. You got one in. The striker thing is still complicated, right? It's still complicated. If you look at let's run through a couple of the pieces of news here, by the way. Let me pull this up. I've got what's on MPB's page here for a couple of things. We'll talk about Osimhen in a second. So, well, let's do this, okay? Disco Mirror says that Osimhen is headed into the last year of his contract at Napoli. United are confident they can sign him for a fee considerably lower than his market value. They're looking at him for 40 million. Amorim has made him his top target. We'll talk about whether this is all true or not in a minute. He sees Victor Osimhen as the perfect player to solve their problems. Then we go to this about Cunha, sees United as one of the biggest clubs, yada yada. And then we talk about Wheeler and Salt saying we intend to trigger the release clauses as soon as it's open so we can wrap them up, and that's probably true. Cunha is very close, etc., etc. And then it says this is the important part here. This is the complications, and this is why I'm not letting go of Victor Osimhen. Liam Delap is United's number one target, but there's still obstacles to sign him despite his price dropping to 30 million once Ipswich relegation is confirmed. There's fierce competition and other fees connected with the deal that could push the figure higher. The biggest problem here is that Chelsea. Chelsea's involvement in this Delap thing. GC says, when they demolish Old Trafford, do you think they'll sell every brick and blade of grass to fans? Will that count as profit? If they did, it would, but no, I don't think they would do that. But maybe. I mean, didn't Barcelona do that, right? They sold off like pieces of the stadium as like memorabilia. I would buy one of those. I'd take a brick. I would take a brick. I'd buy a brick. An actual brick. I will not be trafficking in a brick from another country. But a brick of Old Trafford. Yeah. I'd do that. I would do that. That would be some cool memorabilia. I don't know if they'll do that, but I would buy it. But yeah, the biggest issue here is Delap is far, 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 far from a sure thing at this point in time. Okay. Yes, United want him. Yes, he's an affordable price, and they're looking at it and saying, "Hey, if we can get a striker we really like in for 30 million, that's a great deal. That's something we should do. That's something we should follow." But there is a lot of competition for him, and I'm personally still think he ends up at Chelsea. That's my personal feeling, is that he ends up at Chelsea. I know that people on the Chelsea side think the same thing, and that worries me from a perspective of I'm not confident from a United standpoint that we get him, because Chelsea do really want him, and Chelsea are fairly confident that they can get him. They have also held talks recently in a similar way that we did with Cunha when we played Wolves. They held talks with Delap and his people just the last weekend when Ipswich was playing them. The other factor is we have to wait on Delap a bit to make that decision. We've not heard at any point in time here that he is certain of wanting to join United. We have not heard here at any point that he's prioritizing United. We've not heard here anything on his intentions as of yet. And until somebody gets that info directly, we have to remain somewhat uncertain of this. You notice the difference, right, between Delap and Cunha? The difference, which is that we've been very much told by Cunha he wants to join. We haven't really heard that from Delap, have we? Unless I missed it. We have not heard that. So that's part of the concerns there. That being said, then there's this part of it. Victor Osimhen is an option for United, and the club could be persuaded to let Rasmus Højlund return to Italy as part of the deal. And it also says somewhere in there, I don't think it's on MPB's page here, but it also says they still, oh, there it is. Napoli still have a strong interest in Alejandro Garnacho, and then there's me, and then there's Osimhen, and all of that. So, in looking at this, yeah, GC, understood. The reason we normally pay is cash offsets the interest. Yeah, totally correct, GC. I completely agreed. Understood there. That is a good explanation. But yeah, I think that it's really up in the air here. The two things that can happen are both Garnacho and Højlund could go to Italy. As I've said before, they'd be willing to let go of either or both in whatever sort of context needs could happen. The thing that has to be noted here with Cunha coming in and a striker coming in is two things. Number one, both Garnacho and Højlund are losing their starting positions. True? Yes. Both remaining at the club would have to accept being a backup at this point in time. For the forward positions, we will have very likely Cunha, a striker, Ahmad, Bruno, Xerxes, Mainu, and Mount all capable. It's a lot of competition. And I would say that the new striker, Cunha, Bruno, and Ahmad are far and away the first four of the three. And then you have probably, at that point, Xerxes, Garnacho, and Højlund competing, albeit Højlund probably has a little less competition because he's actually a number 9, where Xerxes clearly fitting more into the 10's role. So, Garnacho has a decision to make here, and from my perspective, based on everything I've heard in the past, and I've shared this many times, if he's not a starter, his interest in staying will be strongly diminished. And I think that Cunha coming in very obviously is 1-to-1, essentially replacing him in the starting 11. That is the reality. And then there's Cheeto Obi as well. Yes, correct. And then there's the possibility of signing some young striker like we've been talking about from France, one of these young African strikers as well, as an option. So the factor in this is that if we can get Osimhen, it's very likely to be tied to the departure of one of Højlund or Garnacho, with Garnacho being obviously one who provides a lot more from a profitability standpoint. I'd obviously actually be okay with keeping, from a football perspective, I'd be quite okay with keeping Garnacho as a bench player to come off of the bench. I think he's much more effective in those circumstances. I think it would reduce the pressure on him, and I think he's better in his skill set when he comes off the bench running at tired legs. I think it'd be sensible to keep him there. So you could go from Cunha to Garnacho off the bench. You could go Bruno to Xerxes off the bench, or you could go Ahmad to one of them, something like that. That would be my perspective on it. But at the same time, if moving Garnacho allows you to get Victor Osimhen, then you do it. So it's really, really up in the air on this Delap versus Osimhen thing. Now, is there a chance we get neither? Yes. Unfortunately, there is. And if that happens, then obviously United will be looking to prioritize things in a bit of a different way. I think in that circumstance, we don't really know what they're going to do yet there. But I think then you're looking at one of these other strikers, maybe one of these older strikers, as well as a young one. So you get two kind of options in there. Any chance we're interested in Mbeumo on top of Cunha? We are, but I don't think it's possible. And I think one of the things that turns us away from Brentford is how difficult they can be. How difficult they can be in dealing with players. They obviously won't want to lose Mbeumo. They're overachieving like crazy, staying in the Premier League. They don't really have a budget problem because they're just such a small club, that like, it's the same way with Ivan Toney. They made it really difficult. And so I think that's definitely turned us away. Because it's just much more difficult than getting, than a release clause would be, for Cunha. That being said, we miss out on something like Delap. Could we go for, another player as a striker or something like that? Maybe. But realistically here, the current set of circumstances is that he only has 1 year left, but they did the same thing with Ivan Toney, realistically, at this point in time with striker, if we can get Delap, we will. But if we can get Osimhen, and it's far from a sure thing on Delap because we don't know who he's going to pick yet at this point in time. There's a lot of competition for him. As somebody else said, I think it's like every single club in England outside of Arsenal are looking at Delap again. Maybe City as well. If we can get him, we will. But we haven't heard anything about his priorities. We can afford it. Osimhen, to happen, will have to very likely either come for more of a cut price fee or lower his wages demands. He can go to Saudi and get the money and get his full wages. And he totally can. And that option is on the table for him. And that might even be the most likely outcome for him. But if he wants to stay in Europe, then I think we have a good chance of him. I would say it's 60-40 to Delap right now. I would definitely say that. Samik's football late to this. Want to save you this morning. Very good. Thank you, brother. Thank you. But yeah, I want to say 60-40 to Delap. If I was just gonna say between the two, just because it's so circumstantial. But what's really, really obvious is they've said we're gonna get Cunha done. We're gonna have it in the bag. It's ready to go. We've got Cunha. He's there. Now let's line up all of our different scenarios for the number 9 position. Could we go for a third forward? Yes. That is also a possibility. Completely real. We could go for a third forward. Now, to get a third forward, very likely we'd be getting Delap, Cunha, and making a big sale of Garnacho. And then we might go for a young player, one of these other guys, like a Dibbling or something like that. And if we get Champions League, then maybe we look at Xavi Simons and something like that. But we could for sure even go for a third forward, who's more of like a wider player. And that's where someone like Tyler Dibbling could come into play as well, right? Which is that, yeah, we could do that. We could do that. So yeah, that would be a possibility as well. They do want to spend money on the midfield if they can. It's just that it's somewhat dependent on Casemiro. It's somewhat dependent on the other deals. We're just really what's going to happen here this summer is we're very likely going to wrap up Cunha, and we're just going to wait and see at striker what happens. And it'll either be like there's just too many factors for any of us, including United, to know what comes after. You know what I mean? There's too many things to say what happens after. Like, look at it this way. Let's say we get Cunha and we do get Delap. Well, that's our budget. But then what if we get Champions League? And we sell Garnacho. And we loan out Højlund. And Casemiro leaves. Well, suddenly we're working with like 200 million in extra ability to spend this summer based on things like that. You know what I mean? And then the whole world changes. So it's like we're just going to have to take it piece by piece, because until once the season ends, the Champions League thing will know or not know then, right? Once Delap decides, we'll know or not know then. Once we reach, that point, then we'll know, about Osimhen and all of that. On Rashford, there was we can move kind of to the Yap section. We can definitely move to the Yap section a little bit. On Rashford, there was an interesting article from ESPN from Rob Dawson the other day, kind of talking about different things and all that. But one of the things it did say is that he would be certainly. United is a funny place, okay? United is a funny place. Because you have players who we feel like haven't even made it here that still want to be here. Rafa Varane kind of ended ugly with Ten Hag, and he still loves, United. Casemiro has been maybe had some poor things said about him, yada yada, all of that, still wants to stay. The vast majority of players who leave United still love United. We know that. And the vast majority of players we talk to ask to join United still want to join United. I mean, I thought it was hilarious yesterday that the same day we're getting Cunha wants to join United, he's prioritizing United, he loves United, we just had talks with him. Tottenham center back Romero is just out of the blue, yapping and saying, by the way, I would love to leave Tottenham at the end of the season and I'll head to Spain. I think that's funny that in similar seasons, we've got players begging to join us and they've got players talking about leaving while the season's still ongoing. Their best players are trying to get out. And we've got Bruno committing to this punishment of being a United player forever when he had options elsewhere. I think that's funny. I think it's amusing. This De Gea, yeah, I mean, there's so many, right? I mean, Mata was doing work for us. It's like, it's just how it is. It's always like that with United. Could you give us the latest that you know on Osimhen? As I said there, United have made contact with him. United have been, which you already shared, which is fine. They want to know the nature of the deal that could be done. He is really highly admired as potentially the best striker available, but it is conditional. They will want to either get a better fee or better wages, or maybe a little bit of both. And it still may require, from our perspective, a major departure or a Champions League. If Delap chooses Chelsea or cannot be sure that we're going to get him, I'll come back to Rashford. If Delap chooses Chelsea or somewhere else and we cannot be sure that we get him, it's really likely we'll ramp it up a little bit on figuring out how we could make a deal happen there. And certainly the possibility of Garnacho or Højlund leaving to Italy and to Napoli in specific as a part of that, not connected, but as a part of it, is definitely an option being looked at. So it's just an option. It's more conditional, but it is there as an option that they have essentially explored and want to know all the specifics on, they would prefer to spend less money and get Delap and Cunha. But if they can't get Delap, they're not opposed to spending more. It just requires more things to make work at that point in time. But, that's why I said before, I don't even think it's like A and B. They're just different scenarios. Delap is kind of what they're prioritizing. Osimhen is the other option they want lined up. But if they definitely don't want to miss on both, I could say that. They'd really like to get them. So speaking on Rashford again, one of the interesting things that was in the article is it kind of hinted that, he would kind of be okay with coming back to United. And I can say for sure that that's also true. He would be okay coming back to United. Now, the person he'd obviously have to prove as to whether he could rejoin United is Amorim. That would be the person he'd have to convince on that. That's going to be up to Amorim. King Ragnar says 0 chances of Rashi stays and plays the 9. We'll talk about that. That's sort of what I'm getting at here. He'd have to convince Amorim. And that's kind of up to him. Up to him and Amorim on that front. The most likely scenario is that he leaves. I think it'd be really difficult to change the circumstances of where things are at right now. That being said, stranger things have happened. I don't think it'll happen. I think it's too complicated. I think in addition, he would very likely want to have a discussion. The club would want to have a discussion with him about, things like wages and contracts and stuff like that and everything. But because that makes it really hard to keep him on those types of wages, on the balance of how it affects our budget. But yeah. Has anything been revealed about the issues? Look, it was an interesting article because one of the things it said that was that there was a lot of stuff that was said that wasn't true, not by Amorim, but like a lot of the rumors about Rashford's life that have been checked out that just weren't true, things like that, and that is for sure the case as well. And that's why I think it's unfortunate, the whole situation, because I think that a lot of stuff was blown out of proportion across the board, which created essentially an atmosphere for Rashford that was very bad. Now, whether he slipped up in training and things like that, fine. I'm neither here nor there for me. I think that, that has definitely had an impact on that, on his happiness at United, on the feeling of well-being, kind of regardless. But still, it's up to them to figure that out. I would just say, look, I wouldn't rule anything out. But obviously, I would say it's much more likely still, of course, that he's going to leave, because it'd be a very difficult thing to get past, and a lot of things would have to go right. He is also still well admired by Barcelona, and it would seem like a sensible move for him. So yeah, there's that. But let's see here. Any other news today to discuss? I think I've about covered it. But yeah, look, I really, I've said before, you've been listening to my videos. I've never gone off the Osimhen train, simply because I've known for certain that he is highly admired at United and that they like him, and that he is an option. So I'm not leaving that train until we find out, but the goal here, but for sure, I like the idea of getting Cunha wrapped up either way, because the striker is still less competitive. We're looking at a 6th position to compete with Ugarte. Not exactly. I think it's we're more looking at an athletic kind of box-to-boxy midfielder. On the goalkeeper front, I know that people continue to say it's not a priority, and again, I don't disagree based on everything I've said here, because our priorities are scoring goals. That's the priority. That doesn't mean they're not looking at it. I promise you they are. But, they're not scoring. It's not a priority because it's not a priority, because we need to score goals. That's the truth of the matter. And that's where the money goes. We don't want to spend money on the goalkeeper that takes away from fixing the goals. Does that make sense? But as I said, there's a lot of conditional things that could happen through the course of the summer that could lead to us doing that. We will need a sale to get a goalkeeper in. And they have people in mind, and they have looked at them. Who's the one keeper? Lamans, obviously we've talked about Trafford, we talked about them. Then there's the other one from Spain. They have looked at a few goalkeepers as well. It's just like, again, it's not a priority. That doesn't mean it's not something they could get to, because ideally, if they could get everything, Garcia, thank you, done, then they would. But it'll very likely be a sale that necessitates that. In addition, it's more likely to be an affordable one who can compete than it is like someone signing over the top. So have you heard anything exec-wise? Roche, the women's director of football, has been interim for a year. Amy, not in specific, but I can say for sure, 100%, I do know this, that they want to make hires now, including for the women's team. So I don't have any specifics to tell you on that, but I do know that after all of these cuts, after all the people leaving, after all the sackings and things like that and the changes, they're in the hiring process now for a number of people in the upper echelon. And I think that, as far as I know, that did include the women's team. So there will be big I don't know, big like in the same vein as what we've discussed, but there will be hires coming in now. They absolutely will be, and for the women's team, but I don't have specifics of exactly like what roles and things like that at all. Just that there will for sure be hires in the upper echelon of United's management, for sure. Richie, James, question: how many youngsters will be loaned or sold with sell-on clauses? I think a lot. She has been overseeing IR. I believe she has been overseeing the women's team, though. She's the CEO, but I believe she has been overseeing the women's team as well. Missing out for Diogo Costa for Onana. Yeah, I actually agree with that entirely. I really bothered we didn't get Costa years ago. Now, obviously, Hugo Viana, being from Portugal, knows him very well from sport. No, he's not at Sporting, but he knows him from Sporting time. Has seen him plenty, and obviously seems like he's prioritizing bringing him to Manchester City. Which, interesting. Yeah, she's looking at the Newcastle CEO job as well. Yeah, but yes, Richie, I do think we will be loaning and getting quite a few out right now. For selling. When you look at the under 21 side of it, I think there's a few players that need to move, and I think that's as well why we're looking at so many young players to bring in. In that maybe kind of bracket of kind of youth / first teamers and everything. Definitely. Mastantuono, I did see there were finally links for Mastantuono. How long have we been talking about him here? A year? So if we go to the third strike, if we go to a third player, right? If we get our Cunha and our Delap or Osimhen, and we've got more money, and we're selling like a Garnacho, then I think the guys like Dibbling and Mastantuono come into the frame, because United do like him. They have watched him. And he's a top player. But yeah, Chelsea are obviously in the mix for him and such as well. So yeah, we'll see. That's one I think could come up as like that third player. He can certainly play as a bit more of a wide player. He's left-footed, all of that. Wheeler's still going on about copy to Chelsea. It has to be something in it. Well, it says Chelsea are interested in him, right? I couldn't give a fuck if Chelsea are interested in him, frankly. He wants a new contract. United want a new contract. I'm not insulting the reporting. I'm saying, yeah, I don't care. He wants a new contract. We want a new contract. They're talking about it. If Chelsea want Kabi, that's fine for them. But, as long as we're discussing a new deal, there's no evidence we're not going to, go that direction. I don't think Kabi's going anywhere. I really, really do not believe that Kabi is going anywhere. Any young midfielders? I don't know names there. Again, like, because it's also conditional, I don't really believe that we've started. Not that we haven't started work, but I don't think we've like moved forward into anything yet. Is it a wheelchair? It's a chair with wheels, Jerry. Yeah, I have a chair with wheels. Been a minute since you pulled up the squad charts. We can do that soon. What are your thoughts on Angelo Stiller? I really liked him. I looked at him last year for some reason, and he looks like a really good all-round midfielder. Anything on Nemcha? I don't think we're really in for Nemcha. Right wing back situation, I believe, will be addressed internally. With Amos and Leon and Dorgu all possible for the left, that means Dorgu can move to the right. That means Ahmad can be on the right. Mentato can be on the right. Dallo can be on the right. I don't think we're planning to add much in that position at this point in time. Any links at all to Watkins? It's an interesting one to think about, because when we talk about the scenarios of what if we miss out on Delap and we cannot get Osimhen, what do we do? What if we go like Ollie Watkins and a young striker? I'd be okay with something like that. He's certainly has admirers at United. Watkins does. A move like that would be okay, wouldn't it? So, yeah. Wheeler had something in his piece about a Mentato contract soon. Right. So, as I said before, I think there's just a basic kind of technical reason why Mentato has not made it in yet, and it may just be simple as he needs to sign that pro contract. So, ideally, that happens very soon. He signs the pro deal, and then he can get into the first team, and we can see him. Rashford's benched Watkins. Fair enough. Well, then maybe take Rashford back, and you don't get a. Man. And you get another striker on top of that. Look, if we miss out on both Delap and Osimhen, then I'm not sure what we're going to do there. Are United looking? United would move Shaw or Mount this summer, 100% if they could. But it's going to be really hard to move both of them or either of them because of the wages and all of that. They could go on loan, though. There are definitely loan possibilities. If Casemiro didn't leave, is there a chance to bring a prospect player? Yes. I'm not saying we can't get a midfielder in. I'm not saying we can't get a midfielder in, but what I'm saying is that with the budget being spent up front, we don't yet know how much there will be for a midfielder, barring Casemiro leaving. Until we know, like, there's so many conditionals this summer. A lot of summers I kind of have the idea of like, we're going to spend X here, we're going to spend X here, we're going to spend X here. This one's just purely sale dependent, etc. It's much more complicated because of this factor of Champions League, and because we're prioritizing the front line so much that we need to know what we're spending on Delap or Osimhen or them. Garnacho or Højlund to Italy, yeah, that is a sincere possibility. Joker is just off the table essentially for us, Charles, as far as we all know. He's not someone that it seems possible for us to sign. It seems like he's nailed on for Arsenal, to be honest. Garnacho would thrive at Napoli. I think he would too. I think he would as well. I think he'd do great at Napoli. I think he would do very well at Napoli. I don't think Mentato signed his pro deal yet, no. At most, only one of Amorim's midfielders need to be decent at progression. Ederson from Atlanta is very likely going to Saudi. Al Hilal, I think, if it was correct, what I remember. Oh, the other thing I want to mention, by the way, on Osimhen is that Yagiz, there's a lot of reports in Turkey, right? And you never really know who's whether any are worth listening to. There is one that is absolutely worth listening to, and it is our friend Yagiz Sabuncuoglu, and he was retweeting his United and Osimhen stuff from February today. If you noticed that, he's still on the train, he's still on the train that yeah, he's still on that train. So it's just more evidence that potentially Osimhen here is in fact a genuine option that we need to keep an eye on. Yeah, I mean it's we haven't given up. I mean, look, we've got like 4 things today to kind of like add to the Osimhen train, and I've told you I've never gone off of it entirely, simply because I'm not saying it's more likely, but because it's possible, and United like him, and that's it. Chelsea favorites for Delap? I personally think they are, truthfully, but I don't know. There was some stuff from the Chelsea side that makes me think that, but I don't know. What do I make of the mass? Yeah, because we got one from Lipton as well, who's actually, he's at the Sun, but he's actually a good journalist. And from Sky. Like I said, I think that if we get to like a third one, then a third forward, if we get to the point where we can afford that, then I think he becomes in the thoughts. Is there a way to get Cunha and Osimhen without European football? Yes. With a major sale of Garnacho, basically. I say Garnacho, not Højlund, because we don't make any money on Højlund leaving. Garnacho's would open up the profit for a deal. That's why I'm doing that. I'm not trying to single him out, but that would be the requirement. Without European football, very likely we'd have to make a sale like that. Yep. That's like sincerely profitable for us. Thoughts on Vlahovic? I don't think he's as bad as some people make out, but I don't think he's very good either. All right, let's see. Anything else? Rashford sale. A Rashford sale may not make us much. It has to bear in mind here, because we still owe a lot of money. He's got 3 years left on a contract. We owe him £45 million. So whatever else he gets, we may have to use a chunk of that money to pay off his contract. If we sell him for 40 million, I think we'll have to use a good chunk of that. So we may not make much on Rashford. Obviously, we do free the wages off fully, but yeah. Osimhen just scored. Richie said he was watching him in a cafe in Turkey. Let's see it. I want to see the goal here. Can't put it on or I'll get struck. Oh, with his head. And I want to remind you again, this point I'm making. I really do. How much I want a striker. There you go, Richie. There you go. How much I remind you, my biggest thing on Osimhen over Delap is that he scores goals with his fucking head. Look at how many times we miss headers. Look at how many opportunities for headers we don't score, and how many we do with Maguire and them up in the attack. We need guys who score with their head. We so do. that goal from Osimhen is one we create that chance often. We putting those crosses in and we just cannot score with them, because we just have nobody to score those goals. And that is a concern I have with Liam Delap. Xerxes' header was top tier, as was Maguire's. Like, we've had those headers have got us. They're so important, though. Like, the guys who can score those have saved our ass, But so many times we put crosses in, nobody there. Amos was tossing them in. Dorgu as well had putting these great crosses in against Wolves. They don't even count as chances. Nobody there. Ever. It's crazy. We need that, man. We need that. And that is, for me, one of the reasons why Osimhen is a must buy, because he's so good at that. He is so good at that. And I think that is something we will still lack. Even if Delap and Cunha join, I think we will still lack that. All right, guys, I'm going to end it here. It's been almost an hour and a half. I always forget how many people turn up for for transfer news. While you're here, before you leave, please make sure you do like the video, like the stream, all of that. Get the numbers up, helps me. All of that, really appreciate it. So thank you very much for hanging out with me today. I hope it's been fun and interesting. It's nice to see United actually genuinely doing what I said. Now, I'll remind you how many times I got told that it was PR saying that with Ineos here for the whole year, with these people in place for the whole year, they actually were working on getting deals done early. I'll remind you, back in January, I said, look, they're going to be lining these deals up for summer. They're already working on them. They're already starting on them. They want them done early. A lot of PR accusations, but it was the truth. It was the truth. And here you go. This is April, and we're talking about being close to a major signing, maybe two already. They are working on this. They do want things done early. They do not have the view that we need to wait, and that is not PR. That is not bullshit. That is the truth, and that's what they want. So let's hope they pull it off. They still have to make those things happen, but they are obviously doing the right things as of now to get us what we need. So yeah. All right, everybody, have a good